She was £1 million player. We've broken that record now. That's just going to open the floodgates.
I think it's massive that the WSL is going to be on Sky Sports.
What's special for me about Chloe Kelly and Lauren James is I think they do something that's quite rare. They have the mainstream viewer and then they've got the streets.
Welcome home. After another historic summer for football, the WSL is back in business and Sky Sports is the official home, screening 90% of this season's games. The best league in the world deserves the very best of your attention. So as another season begins, Versus has brought together some of the most influential voices in football culture to tell you everything you need to know. I'm joined by Marva, Tiannah and Fadumo. So whether you're a diehard fan or new to the action, we are your cheat code to get ready for the biggest party in sport. Welcome home. Welcome everyone. The WSL is back. A super exciting season ahead. Last season in the WSL, we had Chelsea's dominance, Arsenal winning the Champions League again, record attendance across multiple different stadiums. But I need to know, what was your defining moment of the WSL season?
I'd probably say Arsenal winning the Champions League, just because I think it really shows that English clubs can be competitive in Europe in a way that we haven't really seen before. And I also think that's going to make a big difference going into this season.
That's a good shout. What about you, Marva?
Sort of linked, but I actually think my standout moment is the Onus Out graffiti that appeared. Because culturally, we hadn't quite seen anything like that in women's football. We've heard a lot of fans complain about their managers, and that's grown more so over the years as more people have come to demand more from their team, and as they should. But there are lots of teams, I won't mention, there are lots of teams who have been complaining about their managers where nothing's been done. And I think there's a tendency for some clubs to not care too much and think, well, if you're getting us this position in the table, then it is what it is. Whereas I think that was a standout moment culturally to be like, as women's football fans, we're not going to take it, actually. And we're not going to do the thing of just like, oh, well, I guess we'll be happy with what we've got. Like, to have graffiti out, like, they cared that much. And then what happened? He got sacked and then they went on to win the Champions League.
That was the moment. That was the...
So owners of clubs are probably shaking in their boots right now because, it worked. It's not that he got sacked and then they didn't do that well, etc. It's like, no, it worked.
That's a fair point. Sky Sports is the home of the WSL for this season. 90% of the games will be available on Sky Sports channels and platforms, which is amazing. How influential is that for the growth of the league?
I think it's so important, partly because Sky Sports has been the home of football for so long. I mean, I remember when I was little, growing up, Super Sunday would always be on in my house. And I think when you've got a massive channel like that taking on women's football, it's going to make a huge difference, I think.
I think it's massive that the WSL is going to be on Sky Sports, or 90% of it, because when you've got teams like London City Lionesses who are going to be in the WSL for the first time and they don't have a men's counterpart, their independent team, you need those eyes, you need those fans tuning in to watch the games. And when you have the likes of Brighton who are trying to break into that top 4 or top 3, I think it's really good that those storylines just aren't restricted to, are Chelsea going to win the league again? Or Arsenal going to challenge?
What I've been saying for so long about women's football is that it needs those narratives, it needs those storylines. Chloe Kelly's now a household name. And now we're at a point where people know the basis of the storylines, but now can actually watch it.
Having it on something like Sky Sports completely legitimises it to people who are just getting into it.
Whilst we're going to see some great matches this season, this transfer window has probably been one of the most impactful we've ever seen in the league. Every single club is getting busy. Even the clubs that have not had much activity, they've made 1 or 2 signings that have made me go, I can see what you're doing there. I'm putting you guys on the spot here. But if you could pick one transfer that has moved you, that's going to cause a shift in the league, what would that transfer be?
I want to cheat and just say London City Lionesses, but I'll narrow it
as
down
a whole.
As a whole, because they're just they've got a new starting 11, basically. They've just invested in an insane amount. If I was to narrow it down to one of their signings, maybe Katie Zellum, because it isn't just a case of what we see sometimes of just getting the sort of slightly aging talents. They've got a mixture in terms of what they've brought in of experience, but also not just those who are kind of at retiring age or anything. Like Fadumo said before, them competing is going to mean so much, because it isn't just a case of them competing in the league. It's what it tells every other club about what they need to do in the transfer market now, because a lot of other clubs have kind of sat back a little bit and gone, we'll spend here, we'll spend there, because they know that the club below, who's just come up, might just get relegated. This time, they can't take that risk. So all of these clubs have had to go, who do we need to get in to compete with London City Lionesses, because they're not going to go down without a fight. So I think that's been, in terms of what it's going to do for the league, been the most impactful.
I would probably say Arsenal. Olivia Smith and Taylor Hines, I think, are so good for them. And more so from the fact that I think Arsenal have been victim of, touchwood, the ACL club. Not to say that I really don't want anyone to get ACL injury, but I think they've been victims of getting a lot of injuries, which has affected their season in the long run. And I think depth has been the overriding issue. So just having a bit of depth within the squad, even the option to send Michelle Adjaman over to Brighton on another loan spell for her to go and develop herself.
I would say Olivia Smith, she was a £1 million player. We've broken that record now, and I think that's just going to open the floodgates. We're seeing so much more investment from other teams as well, like Arsenal's doing it, but there's also like London City Lionesses, like we've already said. And I think going forward, we're going to see more and more players at that value.
There's one player for me that stands out, and it's a bit of a grey area, but technically, Chloe Kelly counts as a new signing for Arsenal. She was only there on loan, so therefore that is a big signing. I know she was never going back to City, but imagine they turned around and said, we've had a change of heart. Can you come back? That would have been great for the league.
She's not answering that call, by the
way. Exactly. And I guess the question I wanted to ask all of you was, is the WSL the league to play in now, to come to, for talents across the world?
I think so. I can't really see who's competing, especially at a level of like every team in the league. I think obviously we know there are some standout teams in other leagues, but in terms of that competitiveness throughout the league, I don't think any league fully competes with that. You see it now in like some of the strikers and the talents that you're seeing at, I don't want to say smaller clubs, because I'm not going to put my club down like that. But if you look at Everton, for example, my club, Gago, who signed in January and is like one of the best strikers in the league. Martinez at West Ham scored 4 in a game, and like she was only there from January and was up there with some of the top scorers in the league. Like, I don't think you're seeing that level of talent across the board in other leagues.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that the WSL has like the 4 things that make a league so attractive. One of them is the culture. Second, you've got the competition. Third, you've got the visibility. And then fourth, I'd say money. I mean, that is important to players, especially, you know, like female players, that the money wasn't in this sport for them while they were growing up, and now it is. And especially in a league like the WSL, you've really only got a couple of other leagues that can compete with that, and that's only going to get better and better, I think.
Across the WSL, we've seen some record crowds across some amazing stadiums. We're talking the Emirates, Old Trafford, Stamford Bridge. And when you're watching on Sky, these spectacles look amazing. Should every club be pushing to have more games played at the bigger stadiums?
You can tell how much it means to players, especially, I watched Olivia Smith score at Anfield actually, and like that was like, yeah, I know, I'm going to cry thinking about it now, but anyway, you can tell how much it means to the players to be, you know, on such a historic pitch and in front of a crowd and stuff. But at the same time, I feel like you don't want to be pushing all the games into Anfield because they only open half the ground. I think it's kind of damaging to the atmosphere in some ways. But if you've got a club like Arsenal that can fill out stadiums all the time, then I don't see why you wouldn't push to do it. What I will say as well on the flip side of that, though, is that also like Liverpool Women's other home ground sometimes doesn't feel like home because it's obviously a rented stadium from a rugby team. And the one that they had before that was at Prenton Park and it was blue. So it's like, it doesn't feel like a Liverpool stadium at all. So in that sense, you want football clubs like women's football teams to have somewhere that really feels like home for them. I think that's really important as well.
I mean, it's just part of the culture, right? Like, I think you can't really get hooked on a sport unless you see other people care. I went to an Arsenal game where it was like packed out stadium and they lost, but as you walked out the stadium I heard a dad and his son like dissecting the game and they're like angry and they're like, but we could have done that and we could have scored if the ref had just done that. And sometimes you need those moments of losses. Sometimes you need those moments of like anger in the stadium and hurt, because that's the thing that then hooks you in to be like, I'm going to go again. Like, you need those stories of hurt to kind of overcome them. And I think if it's all just kind of pleasantries, and obviously you want nice moments. You don't want it to be like a horribly hostile environment, but as long as it's like passion that comes with it, I think that is a thing that really gets people going and being like, I was there for that 94th minute winner where, you know, the stadium was rocking and everyone was going crazy, and that's the thing that hooks people in.
This season, we are due to see some amazing coverage on the pitch on Sky Sports. Off the pitch, however, it feels like there's been a real shift that we haven't seen like this before. One of which is how Chloe Kelly has transcended the sport. It is Chloe Kelly mania. She literally has the streets. Would you say she's the most influential baller in England right now?
She's up there. I think, like, you can't really deny that, like you were saying, there's TikTok trends that are based on her, and I think that's absolutely crazy. But I do think that we're lucky that the WSL has several footballers that I would consider super influential.
As journalists that work in this industry, like, storytelling is so important, and it's easy to tell the story of one individual who has a bit of character to them, has a bit of flair. You know, they're doing something in their spare time. There's so many different things around culture and fashion and music you can get involved in, rather than trying to sell a whole team story at times. And I think with women's football, it's gotten to a point now that femininity and like being athletic or athleticism can now kind of go hand in hand a bit better. I think before it was almost like you need to pick one over the other. Like, if you're an athlete, go and be an athlete on that side, where, you know, the massive t-shirts or the hand-me-downs from the men's side, and don't be too involved in the fashion side of sport. Whereas I flipping love it. I love a good Chloe Kelly when she's going down to the Brit Awards and she's like on the red carpet. I'm just like, give me more of this, because you're seeing, you know, these female athletes in their truest form as to however they want to be. And some of them do love a good fashion show and they do love to get involved in the music and the culture side of it, and some of them don't. But it's the fact that the options actually now exist.
What's special for me about like Chloe Kelly and Lauren James is I think they do something that's quite rare in men's football as well, which is that they have the mainstream viewer and like the mainstream coverage love, and then they've got the streets. Like they're
Did you
loved.
see Chloe Kelly's block party afterwards? Like,
Yeah.
They had a party outside, and I was like,
But also with Chloe Kelly, I don't know if people remember, there was like compilations of her going viral even before 2022, and it was one of the first like you know, streets won't forget this baller kind of like mixed compilation that I hadn't seen in women's football, and it was just of her like skills highlights for Man City when she was playing for them, and that was like, whoa, like I've only ever seen this for like Marta like years and years ago. I haven't seen this for like a WSL homegrown player. And I think she so beautifully kind of rides both waves of that. And Lauren James, I think, does that too. Obviously, there's the Reece James connection, which helps. But I think these players who kind of bring this like flair to their game that any football fan, no matter who you support, even if you don't know these players, if you can watch those clips and just be like watch a Lauren James performance, particularly that one against Arsenal. I think players like that who just bring so much, like, we talk about their style and their individuality and all of that off the pitch, but it's who can do that on the pitch as well and not be afraid to like have fun with it. And I think that really transcends with Chloe Kelly and Lauren James for me.
The WSL is often dubbed the most inclusive league in the world. Does representation in the women's game feel further ahead than the men's?
I think in some ways, yes. I think obviously women's football doesn't have that same history of men's football when you look at certain histories of hooliganism or sort of far-right nationalism and racism. So in that sense, you're already a step ahead. And then you've got women, so that's already a step ahead. And then you've got inclusivity when it comes to LGBTQ plus representation, which we just don't see at all on the same level in men's football. So in those senses, yes, it's ahead, but I think we also need to be careful about labelling it as an inclusive league, because inclusive for who is the big question of the follow-up there.
For sure. I mean, I think from a fan perspective, you can say that it's like more inclusive than the men's game, because I think women's football's always grown from a place of community, and, you know, the type of women that were going into football when it wasn't really a career path have always been those that have sort of defied traditional gender stereotypes and so on. And that's why the fan community that's rallied around women's sport has tended to be a bit more inclusive. But as you were saying, there's still such a long way to go, because you have to think about who exactly you're being inclusive for. And there are still such barriers to entry for certain types of women and girls. I mean, I think the statistic is that overall, between the ages of 12 and 16, half of women stop playing sport. But if you look more specifically at the demographics there, that's even lower for, you know, Black, Asian, ethnic minority women and girls. So like you need to address those issues, and we can't just sit back on our laurels and be like, oh, we're an inclusive league, we have such inclusive fan bases, because you need to think about the players that are actually getting to the top level and performing on the pitch.
I think the affordability in women's football has long been way better than it's ever been in men's football. And I think part of that obviously is the fact that women's football took a lot longer to develop. You know, there was that historical ban that went over 50 years. So I think young athletes and young fans are not only able to watch WSL games on Sky Sport, but they're able to go to those games at the same time. And that's why it's also, well, why there is another argument as to why WSL games need to be held at those big stadiums, because they need to be accessible for those fans.
It's great to hear players talk about their experiences, but it's also great to see them express themselves in different forms. One of which I'm seeing a lot is fashion, as we mentioned. But who's really doing their big fashion thing? I think there's a few sleepers that we don't often speak about in the league.
Kadisha Buchanan is like,
yeah, good shout.
I'm not gonna
I think for me, Maz Pacheco and Leno Gunning-Williams, I think particularly Spurs have actually embraced this very well in terms of like their content and what they put out on social media. Like nearly every time they come into training, they take pictures of their outfits, collaborate with then like other like Instagram pages and collab posts with them to give it, you know, some more light on them. And I think it works. Like I think people then actually get to know the players a bit more, get to know their personalities. And I kind of wish other clubs would just embrace that a little bit more, because I think the good thing about women's football is that we almost don't have that like tradition holding us back. Whereas as someone who works in both men's and women's football, the comments that I sometimes get if I just wear something slightly different, like when I'm interviewing a men's footballer, like I'm not even joking, I was like wearing a top that was like slightly halter neck, so as a result my like fleece cardigan I just wore slightly off my shoulder. When I tell you, people specifically found me to DM me saying, why weren't you wearing your fleece properly? I'm like, we can't have any expression, we can't have like
exactly.
whereas like
being stylish.
and then you also see it in terms of backlash when Dominic Calvert-Lewin or like anyone wants to embrace their fashion. You get fans being like, stick to football, etc., etc. Whereas I think in women's football we don't have that. Like fans want to see it. They're like begging for it. So embrace it more, because the opportunity is there for you.
I think Spurs and Chelsea and occasionally Man City are the main women's clubs that I've seen doing sort of training fits or like tunnel fits pre-training or whatever. But I think there's so much more that could be done. There's an option for players to do it or not do it. Like not everyone has to come into training super dressed up, but it's just nice that the option is there for players who do want to express themselves that way.
I think your favourite men's footballers will wear similar things to your favourite singers, your favourite rappers. When you look at red carpet, they'll wear similar things to your favourite actors. Whereas going back to what you were saying earlier about like embracing the athleticism of your body and things like that, I think women's football players and women's sports stars as a whole operate in a very niche like cultural market, in the sense that, like, I know for me growing up, I think for anyone who was like sporty or queer or just like more athletic in their build, growing up you couldn't really look on TV and look in fashion magazines and see women who were dressed in a way that represented you. It was all very, you had to wear dress and heels. And even if you look at pictures of like WSL players from 10 years ago when they had to go to like ceremonies, they were essentially being like forced into these dresses that they were like, this is just not for me. Whereas I think recently they've really embraced that, and there's a more direct connection. So when you see like Leah Williamson wearing a waistcoat suit with loafers or clogs or whatever, like you get fans going, I'm going to wear that exact thing, because they're the only people doing it in that level of limelight. Whereas I don't think you have that kind of niche element and influence in men's football.
I think also with women's football in general, like with men's football shirts, you'll see the ad that comes out and, you'll see their fans flock to buying the shirt, but most likely it's probably just to wear it to the game or at home or a social setting where they're watching the game. Whereas I think women in general, and I think this goes across all fashion, will try and style something in accordance to kind of what matches their personality. And I think women are probably a bit more versatile with how they wear their football shirts. And I think brands are really starting to tap into that a little bit. You kind of saw that with Arsenal's new kit release. I think the internet lost its mind when it came out and it was cropped. And it was like, how did no one think of this? Like, well, they've been doing it for years. Exactly. But it's just small things like that, like not being an afterthought, I think, as a fan is really important. And that you're starting to see that a bit more with women's football.
I'm really excited for the season. Not just because of everything we've spoken about. It's the fact that so many of these games we can watch live on Sky. There's going to be jeopardy, there's going to be emotion, there's going to be high quality. But there's no way that we're going into the season without getting some of your takes for the season. So I've got some quick fire questions.
This is going to age badly, but yeah.
Listen, if you're brave enough to put a shout out there, that's all that matters. Cool, so already, sweet. Champions.
Chelsea.
Arsenal.
I'm going to go Chelsea. I'm not
7p. Mamma mia. Top goal scorer.
Bunny Shaw.
3p.
I'm going to say Sam Kerr.
The return.
Yeah.
Bunny Shaw.
3p.
Mm-hmm.
Surprise package.
I'll say Brighton.
I'm going to say Spurs because I think Martin Ho going to Spurs is going to be big deal for them.
I'm going to say Aston Villa. I think they've made some young signings. It's going to be better for them.
I'm going to throw one in. I think London City Lionesses are going to surprise some people. I think their finishing position is going to make people realise we should have invested a bit more money sooner. Best kit.
Oh, I think it has to be the Arsenal third kit. It has to be. The colours are just, I'm jealous. I like it.
Every United kit. Sorry, guys.
I was going to be biased as well and say
I've got
Liverpool.
nothing to add to that discussion.
All right, then the Everton third kit's really nice as well.
Chelsea third.
Which was,
I
to
quite
be
like
fair,
it,
that
yeah,
is
but-
really nice.
That kit. Sam Kerr in that kit.
That like retro, yeah.
Sam Kerr in that kit. That might be a golden boot season. Player most likely to walk at Fashion Week.
I think Chloe Kelly.
I still think Leah Williamson.
Yeah, Leah Williamson.
Most likely, I'll say Leah, but I feel like Lauren James is a sleeper pick.
Yeah, but Chloe Kelly could do her penalty thing down the field. So.
That's probably
I
a
can
health
see
and
the
safety
vision.
hazard. But to be fair, if they do it on grass, make
Yeah,
it homely
yeah.
for her. Player most likely to start a podcast. So not anyone that's got one at the moment.
I was going to say every player has a podcast nowadays. I don't know. Just the one player who doesn't, whoever she is out there.
Beth Mead doesn't have a podcast, does she?
No, she's not.
Beth Mead then, that's my answer.
I'd really like to see a Bunny Shaw podcast.
Oh my God, me too.
I would
Yeah,
love
I'm
to
going
see
to
a Bunny
steal
Shaw
that one.
podcast.
That would be
Guests.
so good.
Yeah.
With guests on.
She's mates with Usain Bolt. Like, come on.
That would be really good.
Imagine the stories.
Yeah. And she just seems so nice. She seems
when I came
so-
to WSL, I just thought, I'll win Golden Boot twice. Just that the insights would be pretty cool. Player most likely to break the internet with a post-match interview on Sky Sports.
I've got mine. Kirsten Kasparai.
Yeah.
I can see that.
I kind of see it. Now that you said it, I kind of hear it. I'm going to say Lucy Bronze. Like, you never know. She's walking around with a broken leg. We didn't know about it, so...
I'd maybe say Chloe Kelly for that as well, just because like some of her post-Euros interviews when she was on stage as well, like...
Hopefully not expletives this time.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much for joining me today. It's time for me to blow the final whistle on our show, but I am hyped for the season ahead of us, and I hope you are too. Sky Sports is the official home of the WSL this season, with 90% of the league's live matches. Watch all of the action on Sky Sports now. Let the show begin.